There are 298 prisoners on death row in the state of Florida. This is part 4 of the series. Jason Walton, 65 years old, 39 years on death row. On June 18, 1982, in the early hours of the morning, 80-year-old Chris Fridella called the police to report that his father and 2 of his father's friends had been shot. When the police came, they discovered Bobby Martindale, Gary Peterson, and Stephen Fridella lying face down on the ground, dead, with their wrists bound behind them. The victims' wallets had been searched, and it appeared like someone was looking for valuables because the entire house had been ransacked. 6 months later, Stephen Fridella's ex-wife, Robin Fridella, gave police evidence that helped identify Jason Walton, with whom she had a relationship at the time, and his accomplices Terry Van Royal, Richard Cooper, and Jeff McCoy. Walton admitted to the robbery in an interview, but said he didn't shoot the victims. He stated that the 4 co-defendants had been planning the heist for more than a week when they went to the Fridella home on the evening of June 18, 1982. The adults in the home were gathered up by Walton, Royal, McCoy, and Cooper, who then bound their hands and placed them on the living room floor. The other 3 men stayed in the home while Jeff McCoy went back to the car. Chris Fridella, age 8, was similarly shackled and led into the restroom where he was left unhurt. Cooper and Royal were in charge of protecting the prisoners while Walton searched the home for cash and cocaine. Walton stated that after one of the detainees recognized him, he gave the order for everyone to escape. He claimed that when he left the residence, he heard gunshots. According to co-defendant Richard Cooper, Walton ordered the 3 men to be shot after he was identified. When his own gun malfunctioned, Walton ordered Cooper and Royal to start firing on the captured men. Walton left the home and informed Cooper that one of the men was still alive. He then gave Cooper the order to go back and shoot Fridella once more. William Kelley, 81 years old, 39 years on death row. Charles Von Maxey's murderer, William Harold Kelley, was found guilty. Irene Von Maxey, the wife of Charles Von Maxey, and John Sweet, her boyfriend, hired him for murder. Charles was fatally shot and stabbed by Kelley on October 3, 1966, inside his home. Sweet and Irene intended to cohabitate using the victim's over $1 million inheritance. The case went cold for more than a decade after Sweet was let go for lack of proof. Sweet got involved in Massachusetts criminal mob activity in 1981. When asked by the police about the killing of Von Maxey, Sweet provided a statement in exchange for immunity. This testimony was largely the foundation for Kelley's conviction. Because the jury was unable to come to a conclusion, Kelley's first trial was declared a mistrial. A guilty judgment for first-degree murder was returned in Kelley's second trial, which started in March 1984, along with a recommendation for the death penalty. The case was abandoned for more than 10 years after Sweet was let go owing to insufficient evidence. Carl Puyatti, 61 years old, 39 years on death row. The victim, Sherilyn Ritchie, was killed by Carl Puyatti and Robert Dewey Glock, who then robbed and killed her. On August 16, 1983, Ritchie was approached by Puyatti and Glock when she got out of her car in a Bradenton shopping center parking lot. After forcing Ritchie back into her vehicle, the 2 took off in it. They grabbed $50 from her purse and forced her to use her bank to cash a $100 check. As they were leaving Dade City, they took Ritchie to an orange grove where they stole the victim's wedding ring and left her by the side of the road. The 2 drove a short way before deciding to kill the woman, at which point they drove back to her. She was twice shot by Puyatti. When they saw she was still standing after they had driven off, they turned around and shot her again. The 2 took a third pass with the automobile, and when the woman didn't collapse, Glock shot her once more. 4 days later, a New Jersey state trooper pulled over the victim's car and discovered 2 firearms inside. On the basis of a weapons violation, he detained Puyatti and Glock. The murder weapon was eventually determined by police to be the revolver in the glove box of the vehicle. The following day, Puyatti and Glock each admitted to robbing and killing the victim. Although the early admissions were inconsistent, on August 24, 1983, both men delivered a joint statement in which they concurred that Glock had first suggested shooting the victim, that Puyatti had fired the opening shots, and that Glock had fired the last shots. Jeffrey Muehlman, 59 years old, 39 years on death row. On May 2, 1983, 97-year-old Bowman hired Muehlman as a helper. Muehlman impersonated Jeff Williams. On May 4, 1983, Muehlman had decided to rob and kill the victim by the afternoon. He requested assistance from a friend with the heist and body disposal. When this acquaintance failed to show up on the evening of May 4, 1983, Muehlman made the decision to carry out the crime himself. He placed 2 nearly empty coffee cups on the kitchen table and covered it with breadcrumbs. These acts were an attempt to give the impression that the two had breakfast and then gotten into the victim's car to go for a drive. After that, Muehlman cleaned the house to get rid of his fingerprints. He repeatedly struck the victim, who was sleeping in his bed, with a cast-iron frying pan. Muehlman tried to strangle the victim after these blows failed to kill him, but he was unable to stop the blood supply to the brain. The victim was awake long enough to plead for mercy as he lay in his bed helpless and staring at Muehlman. Following that, Muehlman pushed 2 newspapers into the victim's throat while removing their plastic wrappers. As the bags showed the victim was still breathing, Muehlman pushed them further down the throat. In the end, the victim died. Gregory KOKAL, 60 years old, 39 years on death row. On September 29, 1983, at midnight, Gregory Allen KOKAL and William O. KELLEY picked up victim Jeffrey Russell, who was a hitchhiker. Then they took a car to a park in Jacksonville Beach. Russell was attacked as soon as they got out of the car and battered with KOKAL's pool cue before being robbed. Russell was ordered to go about 100 feet, where he begged for his life while being knocked out by the pool cue. It was discovered during the autopsy that the victim was murdered by a gunshot. Only the investigating cops knew that a gunshot was the cause of death. Police caught KOKAL the following morning when he took off in O'Kelly's pickup from a fueling station without paying. KOKAL offered O'Kelly's Colorado license, the victim's New York license, an Arizona vehicle registration in O'Kelly's name, along with his own Florida license when the police officer asked for identification. In connection with the gasoline theft, the police detained KOKAL and inventoried the truck. The murder weapon and the box of shells bearing KOKAL's prints were discovered during the truck's search. However, KOKAL was let go since the officer was unaware of his role in the killing. KOKAL told a friend about the heist and murder later that day, including information that was only available to the police, such as the fatal gunshot. After a warrant was issued for KOKAL's arrest, he was taken into custody. Norman McKenzie, 59 years old, 16 years on death row. 2 staff of Flagler Hospital were alarmed on October 5, 2006, when respiratory therapist Randy Peacock failed to show up for work. The 2 workers took a car to the house Charles Johnston and Peacock shared. When they got there, they saw that Peacock's green convertible wasn't there. When the staff members arrived at the house, they saw Peacock face down in a pool of blood on the kitchen floor. After securing the area, when deputies from the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office arrived, they discovered Charles Johnston's body in a shed that was also on the property. Police officers discovered a hatchet inside the shed as they were examining the crime scene. It seemed to contain blood on its grip and blade. The kitchen sink contained a butcher knife. In the driveway, deputies spotted a Gold Sport utility vehicle, which they later discovered belonged to Norman Blake McKenzie. Joe Nixon, 62 years old, 38 years on death row. Nixon was found guilty of murdering and kidnapping a woman from a parking lot at a Tallahassee, Florida shopping center. On August 12, 1984, in the parking lot of the Governor's Square Mall in Tallahassee, Florida, Nixon approached Gene Bickner. Bickner was asked to assist Nixon in jump-starting his vehicle. He later accepted Bickner's offer to drive him home. Nixon gave the woman the indication to travel to a remote location after they were on the road in Bickner's 1973 MG sports car. Bickner was eventually subdued by Nixon, who then stopped the vehicle. He put Bickner in the car's trunk and headed to the woods in southern Leon County, Florida. Bickner was freed from the trunk by Nixon, who then used jumper wires to tie her to a tree and set her on fire, ultimately killing her. The next day, on August 13, 1984, A pair of joggers moving through the wooded region discovered Bickner's burned remains. Around this time, Nixon learned that Bickner's body had been discovered, and panicking, he set fire to both the MG and Bickner's personal effects. Nixon's family members eventually phoned the police when he admitted to them that he had killed someone. Shortly after, Nixon was detained and accused of kidnapping and killing Bickner. Nixon was sentenced to death in Florida's electric chair on July 30, 1985, after being found guilty of murder, kidnapping, armed robbery, and arson. He is currently incarcerated on death row and waiting for the Union Correctional Institution to carry out his execution. As you can see, my voice is still not back. I'm sorry about that. Maybe next week it will get better. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.